the game.
Hey there, I'm Carlson Marketing. What started as helping people with their money at my dining room table grew into a 7-figure financial coaching practice. Now I teach others how to build a thriving coaching business of their own. Whether you're just starting out or you've been coaching for years, I'm here to help you make a bigger impact while doing what you love. This is the Financial Coach Academy podcast. Let's dive in. Hey Coach, on today's episode, we are talking about how your website should evolve as your business grows. And alongside your website changing, your client journey may change and grow as your business develops too. Understanding and optimizing your client journey is one of the most important pieces of a successful and sustainable financial coaching business. Do you have a good handle on your client journey as it stands right now? Luckily for you, we have a free resource to help you with that. Our free client journey guide will help you understand each phase of the client journey, identify key touch points and opportunities within that journey, and create a roadmap for client success. You can get your free guide at financialcoachacademy.com/client journey. I hope you enjoy it. I also want to start this episode with a quick review from Tulip Tree Financial. Tulip Tree Financial left 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, and this person says, this podcast and Carlson Dickey's book, I can't even say my own name, provide essential, practical support for financial coaches, especially entrepreneurs. I love how Carlson delivers expertise both on working with clients and running a business. This is just what I need as a financial coach. I can't imagine navigating without this podcast. Thank you so much for being a listener, Tulip Tree Financial, and congratulations on the success you are having in your business. All right. My guest for today is Ginnie Rowe. She was born in Virginia, but was raised in Argentina before moving to the UK alone at the age of 18 after high school. Luckily to have been brought up in a bilingual home, Ginnie is fluent in Spanish and English. Ginnie worked in a number of marketing agencies for a dozen years before she moved to Arizona with her husband, David, in 2006. Ginnie has decades of experience in both online and offline marketing, but her specialist knowledge and understanding of digital strategy specifically and the role it can play in a brand's development is definitely her strength. Along with her husband, she aims to bring clarity of focus to her clients. Whether that focus is on their overall brand strategy, their marketing communications, or simply their website, having clarity of focus creates positive marketing outcomes. Ginnie helps her clients move their business messaging to the next level and achieve greater success. Hello, Ginnie. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Kelsa. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I know. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Okay, so I'd like to organize our conversation today into sort of 3 separate blocks, if you will. First, I want to ask some very targeted questions for those who are brand spanking new to this journey of entrepreneurship. They have no website and they don't know a thing about getting a website. Then I want to pivot to the middle phase of the journey a bit more and have a conversation about design and branding, but also how that ties to content creation. So for those who maybe have a little bit of things figured out, but they're really needing to bring some more intentionality to it. And then finally, for those who have all of that dialed in, they've got a solid brand and a solid content creation strategy. What comes next? What should they be focusing on? And where should they really set their sights? So how does that sound to you? Does that sound like a good plan for this episode?
Sounds perfect. Yeah, absolutely. We've got lots of info for them.
Okay, good. So let's focus for just a brief moment on the person who's brand spanking new. They know they want to help people. They know it's not a bad idea to have sort of a basic website so that people can find them or check them out. What are the first 3 steps this person should take?
Okay, so the first one really is having a domain name. So the domain name is basically your website address. That is something that you have to be able to do anything. And I always recommend people, even if they're just starting out, even if they don't have a website straight away, they definitely want to get that domain name because you want to use that for your email. So instead of using Gmail or Yahoo or whatever you would use for your email, you want to have a branded email address. So definitely the first step is to get a domain name. And those are super easy to get. They're very affordable. You can get those. There's a number of different websites companies that you can get that from. GoDaddy is one of them. There's another one that I really like called namesilo.com. There's namecheap.com. Those are perfect sites where you can go register your domain. Most of them are going to be like 10 to 12 to maybe $15, depending on kind of like what you want.
And
when
that's
you're
per
choosing
year,
the domain,
right? Like 10 to 20 bucks per year.
Per year, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Per year,
yeah, which is super
and that just depends.
reasonable.
Absolutely. And sometimes I even recommend kind of when you're choosing your domain name, because that's also very important, choosing your domain name. make it as short as possible, because if people have to try to remember it or they have to type it, you want to make it easy for people to do that, and easy so that they don't make mistakes. And the other thing as well is, if you're thinking of your email, you don't want your email address to be super long either. So
Yeah. What do you think about whether it's like .com, .edu, .org, like .biz, all those types of things?
yeah.
I mean, it seems like .com is still the reigning champion there, but does it really matter?
These days, I don't think it does. .com, yes, has always been the reigning champion, but there's less and less .com names available, depending on what your name of the company is going to be, or even if it's your own personal name. Sometimes those are even taken, depending on if your name is a, easy name that a lot of people have. The other thing is, what I like now is that you can have all sorts of different types of dot something. So .org normally is used for nonprofits, so you don't want to use a .org. .biz, .info, those are also good ones. But nowadays you have like .consulting, there's all sorts of different other dots that you can have. Like we have, for example, companies that decided to go with .tv, or we have someone who's like we have a client who uses .care because they're a veterinary office and they wanted to have the word care in there. So we have a lot of different clients that have, like, we have centers that have .center instead of .com. So I would say, depending on the name of your company and what you're trying to do, just look up what the other options are. And if you can get a .com, I would always get the .com. And a lot of times as well, if you want to protect your name, I would buy more than one domain. So you might buy your name.com, your name.info, or your name something else, .consulting, for example. So I would definitely recommend doing that, especially when they only, and then eventually you can let them go if you don't use them. But at least at the beginning, you're protecting your name and no one else can use them.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in here a little bit and say, don't overthink it too much and don't overcomplicate it.
No.
And like, yes, there are definitely some best practices, but there's a lot of us who started our businesses, myself included, who didn't know any of those best practices. And like, I still operate under like the worst domain possible, which is fiscalfitnessphx.com. It is terrible. Like spelling it, saying it, like I should have at least like spelled out the word Phoenix, because now I have to like and then the letters PHX, like it is terrible to try and like get people to say it. But you know what? My business is fine. You know what I mean? So
yes,
at the end of the day,
exactly.
It's fine. Don't overthink it too much. Like really, we tell people when they enroll in the academy, we're like, you got 24 hours to make a decision and then just move on, because you can change it later. You can redirect your website later. You can get a new one later. This is super inexpensive, but you've got to get something going. So, okay. So that's step 1, get a domain. What about 2 and 3?
Okay. 2 and 3 are basically, 2 is kind of split into 2 different sections depending on how you want to move forward. So obviously, once you have your domain, the next thing would be, okay, I want to create a website. Now, depending on your budget, you might have like 0 budget or not a lot of budget. So if you don't have a lot of budget, then my recommendation would be, you go to a third-party website tool like Wix or Squarespace, where you can basically set yourself up with a website, and they provide what we call hosting. So to be able to have a website, you have to have a hosting. You have to host your website somewhere. If you're doing your own thing or you're paying someone, then you probably want to actually purchase a hosting account with a hosting company provider. Now, if you're going to build it yourself and you want to just do something super simple, then my recommendation is you do a do-it-yourself website tool, and that would be companies like Wix and Squarespace. GoDaddy also have their own kind of like, do-it-yourself kind of website. So those are the ones. So if you're completely starting from scratch and you wanted to do it yourself, that's where I would go next, because they have a lot of templates. It's pretty relatively easy to set up. Like you can put your own images, put your own text, create your own pages, upload your logo, choose your colors, do all of that thing. And they're very simple templates. So that's where I would go. Now, if you have a little bit of budget, if you are a new business and you have some budget because you knew that a website was something that you wanted, then I always recommend getting your own hosting account and then setting up something like WordPress on that account. Now, that's a little bit more complex. WordPress is a little bit of a more complex website building tool. So if you're not very technical, I don't necessarily recommend that step. I think something like Squarespace or Wix would be easier because it's kind of very, very simple. But the one thing that I will say about if you go with Wix or Squarespace, you are kind of renting your website. You're not owning your website. So that's kind of an important thing to know, is that you can like create your website on Wix. And if in a year or 2 years time, you're like, hey, I don't want to do Wix anymore, I want to go somewhere else, you can take your content and your images, but you can't take the website and go and put it somewhere else. So that's something to be aware of, as it's
You
not
mean
a
sort
big
of like
deal, but it's just
porting it, like transferring it from one to the
yes,
other. It's like you've got to
transfers.
like almost
Yeah,
like this one gets shut
you have
down
to
and then
start
you
from done.
start from scratch. Okay.
Yeah, you start from scratch. Say for example on WordPress, and we see this a lot when you first start. People are always going to start with something like that, and then when they're ready to upgrade, then that's when you move them to their own hosting, and that's where they're able to own their website, because they own the files, they own everything, and they can move it from whichever hosting company they
Got it.
want
Yeah, it's
to.
just good. I think it's
So,
just good awareness to have, that way you're not surprised by it later, right? It doesn't mean don't do it that way.
exactly.
It's just a matter
No,
of don't be surprised later if that's sort of the direction it sends
exactly.
you. Okay. And
Yeah.
then, so is that 2 and 3, or was that 2 depending on the person? And then 3 is a
I
different step.
think, yeah, I would say two is kind of like you either choose hosting, so you have someone else build it, or you build it on WordPress, for example, or you
Sure.
choose a do it yourself kind of thing. That would be kind of like the two avenues to go in terms of creating a website. The third one that I would say is really important is, before you even start thinking about kind of like, okay, you need a website, is kind of really defining like, what do you want the website to do in the short term? Because you're starting up. So it's really important before you start anything to kind of have a clear in your mind, like, okay, what do I want the website to do? What is my objective for the website? And then build that based on the objective. And you don't have to have like a ton of pages. You don't have to start with anything huge. You can literally start with your homepage. Every site has a homepage, and you can literally have a homepage, an about page, and a contact page, and that is it. Or even just one page. It can even be like, what we would call a landing page, or you can have a one page. In fact, if you go to our website right now, is a one page, because we're building a new website. So behind the scenes, while we're building a new website, we just have a one page. So if you kind of go to our website and go, oh, they just have one page, that's what I call a one page. So that would be a perfect example of a one page.
Yeah, I mean, that is essentially when I came to you, Ginny, a few years ago and was like, I hate my website so much. Oh my God. And I was like so stressed. And you were like, it's okay. Let's put up a one page. It'll be fine. We can make it. And I think we had that for quite a while, because so much of our business comes from referral anyway. So it really was just sort of a temporary thing that was temporary for quite a while, but it worked. It worked just fine, right? It'll get one page, succinctly explained who we are, what we do, gave some options for people to click and link and that kind of thing. So, and I remember back in the day when WordPress was your only option back in the day, right? Like the Squarespace, the Wixes, like those kinds of things, the drop and drag did not exist. I remember Googling like HTML code for blank, like resizing an image, or I mean, I literally had to learn like just the basic coding just to be able to get like, how do I put a border around something, or how do I make this size on the page versus the whole width, or like whatever the case may be. So I'm so glad that there are those options now for people who just need to get something up. I really think, I mean, obviously your information, who you are, what you're about, some links that people can click on to find out more about you or connect with you, or that kind of thing, right? Just that way they know that you exist.
Yeah, because one of the key things that a website does is it gives you credibility. So a lot of us, when we're starting our businesses, we're literally growing by referrals. And that's probably how a lot of coaches are going to grow their businesses, by referrals. So what you want is just have something. So if someone hands someone your business card and they go to your website, they're like, oh, this person really exists and they do provide these services, and they can learn a little bit more. And then the next step would be to, contact you to be able to, discuss more services.
Good. So step 1, domain. Step 2, hosting. Step 3, really just ask yourself, what's the goal for the website when you're first starting out? Yeah. Good. I love it. Go ahead.
No, and one of the things I would say is, if you already have some marketing materials out there, is just make sure that when you're creating the website, that is consistent with what you have out there already as well. So that if someone, if you give them a business card and the business card is yellow and blue, and then they go to the website and it's pink and green, there's not a lot of consistency there. So you just want to make sure that from a brand perspective, you have that consistency as well. But we can talk a little bit more about that later too. So.
Yeah. What's 1 or 2 things that they should not bother with right away?
I would say, like, don't bother. A lot of people are going to say, oh, you need a blog, you need a blog. Don't worry about a blog when you're first starting. You're not going to have time probably to start creating content. And if you have a blog, the worst thing you can do is not have any new posts on there or not have regular posts, and your posts kind of sit there for like months and there's like one post. So I would say don't worry about having a blog post. And I say don't worry about, like, keep it simple. Like, don't worry about having a lot of pages. You don't have to have a page per each service. That if you provide more than one service, you don't have to have that. I think, but it's key to keep it simple. I think that's the thing, is keep it simple when you're first starting.
Yes, good. Okay. So if you're listening right now and you don't have a website, you're brand new, Ginny just told you exactly what to do now so that you can go and do it, right? I love it. Thank you so much, Ginny.
Absolutely.
So I want to shift the conversation now. So someone has a website. It's basic. It's maybe that starter website that they started with, which is perfect. And they've been out there talking with people. They're getting some clients. They're doing their thing. And now they're ready to circle back and take that website up a notch. They've figured out a bit more about who they are, why they want to help people, how they want to help people. Maybe it's still not perfect, but they have a lot more clarity than when they first started. They're ready to improve their website, and strengthen their marketing overall. What do they do next with this website? What should they focus on when it comes to their website, and how do they go about achieving that?
So I think the first thing is, once you have been out there and you're talking and you know who you want to work with and you know the services, the key is kind of like really figuring out who is your ideal client, and then what kind of information are they going to be looking for, about your services. Because you have to, and you mentioned the consumer or the client journey, you mentioned that earlier, and that's exactly what we kind of start with, is like, okay, like, what are your services? Who's your ideal client? Okay, then you start working out, okay, based on my ideal client, this is the kind of content that I need to have on the website. So yes, you're always going to have your about content. You always need to have a contact page. But now you can be a little bit more in your you can work out what is your messaging and what's really going to attract them based on who your ideal client is and what it is that you're trying to do. So that's the key, is kind of like the content that's going to be on your website going forward, working out kind of like what is that going to be. So depending on who your ideal client is and what your services is, that's when you kind of define, okay, this is the journey I want to take them on the website as well. So you have your client journey that they go through with you, but there's also like, what is the journey that they need to take on the website, and what is the final outcome that you want them to do? What is it that you want them to do when you're on your website? You want them to fill in a form? Do you want them to call you? Do you want them to sign up for your newsletter? Do you want them to pay directly online and sign up there and then for something? So those are kind of like the key things that you need to do as a next step.
Yeah, and I just want to give a couple of examples, I would say, sort of specific to financial coaches. Because, again, this is still a work in progress, right? Like, I don't feel like our websites are never totally done, right?
No.
But just as an example right away is, if you think about your ideal client and how much information do they like to have before they make a decision on something? And this is going to be unique to you. So, and I don't want to stereotype, but it's just sort of some general examples of, like, if you're helping architects or engineers, for example, or, financial analysts, they might like a level of specificity. You might need to have a lot of detail about how your process works, what they can expect. You might have a lot of FAQs built out, right? Because you're wanting to identify and acknowledge all of their questions before they have to ask them, right? And they might like that. Some people's clients might get really overwhelmed with that level of detail. And it's like, if you were to try to provide all of that, you're actually going to lose them, and they're going to feel as if you are not the coach for them, right? Maybe they actually want to feel seen and heard from an emotional perspective, right? That you get them, that you're going to be there to support them. They don't actually care about all the details. So even just something like that, thinking about that, I would also say, I think from a coloring perspective, I think this matters. So I see a lot of like black and green websites in the personal finance space for some reason. I don't know why. And it's like the neon green too. It's like black and neon green. If someone's listening right now, they're like, oh my God, I got to go change my website instantly.
Yes.
That is fine for some people. But again, if you're trying to attract the person who is, looking for somebody to connect with them emotionally, and then they go to your website and it's very stark or sort of, drastic appearance that could feel harsh to them, right? It's not very
Yeah.
appealing. It's not very appeasing. So just something to think about in that regard as far as colors. You don't have to have your whole branding figured out necessarily. Like you can shift your colors. We've shifted ours over the years, but just thinking about it in those quadrants.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I would always say is like make sure that your brand is a reflection of who you are as well, because we've come across clients before where you meet them and they're all fun and they're like bubbly and their personalities are really cool, and then you go to the website and it's like completely bland and dry and like super professional, super like boring. And I was like, okay, there's a disconnect between the people that they're going to meet and what your brand is saying online. So that's something else as well to kind of bring your own personality into it as well, because people are buying into you. And when it comes to like the branding, you're totally right with the branding. Just make sure that it reflects who your target audience is, because if you're going to be working with men, you might have more kind of like darker colors. If you're working with women, it might be lighter, softer colors. It depends on like who and if you're working with both men and women, you probably want something in between so that you don't kind of, you don't want it to be pink if you're working with both men and women, because they might be like, oh, I don't know if pink is me, sort of depending on kind of like what that is. And I know like your brand is partly pink, so I wasn't, but you have blue in your brand. So you have
we have blue and green.
So
we have, and this is,
and you have yellow, and so you have different colors. So
and this is where it's like you're trying to blend so many different factors in. So like you're trying to make an extension of you. And really, truly, for years and years and years, pink was just my favorite color. That's really all it boiled down to. There really wasn't much more thought put into it than that. And also, our clients are about 50-50 men and women. And so, but honestly, and people would ask me, I've shared this on this podcast before, of like, oh, do you only help women? I see you have pink in your logo. And I would say, no, I mean, it's about 50-50. But most of the men who come to us, like, genuinely do not care. Like, they are like, yeah, you can like pink and it doesn't matter if I like it or don't like it kind of thing. Like, it's really just not... something that threatens them in some way, I guess. It's just not a big deal to the men that we coach. And so I do think like it being an extension of you almost matters more than anything, I think, because when people question it, people will sometimes question it not because they're questioning they're just curious. I think I always took those questions that I got more from a curiosity perspective. And as long as I could speak to it and be like, no, it's about 50-50. I just really like the color pink. People would be like, okay, like it was really, that was it. Like they would move right along, So I don't think people are always like, the questions don't always come from a bad place, I guess. So as long as you can speak to it and because it comes from you, that's really the most important thing. Okay. So anything else, any other advice for the person that's like now looking to take their website up a notch? That person from the basic starter website.
Yes, from the basic. I think the key is like once you've kind of worked out, and know that, as you said earlier, your website's going to evolve. So your website will evolve with your business. So whatever you create next is going to be probably different to what you go through when you're even, in business 5 years or longer. So know that it's going to evolve and that it's okay for it to evolve and it's okay for you to change. So if you come up with something and then a year later it doesn't feel right, that's okay. Like work on where you are today and then you can build on that. And the great thing about a website is if you kind of like start from scratch and you're building it slowly, you can continue to build on it. You don't have to like start from scratch every single time. So I always say like, and one of the things that I think about and one of the things we always ask our client is, okay, this is where you are today and what we need today, but think about kind of like what you would like, where you would like to be in a year's time or 2 years time, so that when you're building the website, you can easily grow afterwards. Like you don't have to do it now, but at least you have an idea like, okay, like when I continue to build, I want to be able to add this, or I want to be able to add a blog, or I want to be able to add videos, or I want to be able to add whatever it is that you want to add in the future, that you have that in mind so that what you're building is kind of helping you get there as well. So that would be another thing.
Are there some pages that you would say, Ginny, like most websites have? And maybe not every single website, so these are not like a requirement, but like what are the pages that most websites do have?
Obviously, everyone always has a homepage. They always have an about page. You'll always have a contact page. And then you will have at a basic minimum a services or products. So if you are a financial coach and you're only providing online products, for example, because maybe someone wants to do that, then you would have, a products page. Those are kind of like the key things. Some people, in addition, will have like why work with me. So they'll have an about page, which is more about like, this is who I am and this is my background. But then they'll have like, why choose me or why work with us? That goes more into kind of like the benefits of working. That would be where the benefits of working with you, it comes out. Kind of like the about is more like, hey, this is who we are. It's more like a bio. But the like, why work with us could be potentially more about like, what do you get by working with us? Some people have maybe like a process page, like if you come and work with us, these are the steps this is how we're going to work together, that kind of thing. And I definitely agree with you, like when you were talking about like what types of clients, it depends on the type of clients that you have as to how much content you're going to need as well. Because for some people, you only need 4 pages and that's it, at least to start with. Like if you have a home and about a services and a contact page, you're solid. That's a solid website that has enough content to give people the ability to know if they want to work with you or not.
I think how warm people are when they come to you makes a really big difference. So the majority of our clients come from referrals. So they've been referred by another professional or they've been referred by another client. So they already sort of know what we're about, what we've helped the friend achieve, or, that we've come recommended. And so they don't need to go down this big rabbit hole to trust us, that there already a warm factor there. I think our Physical Fitness website has 4 pages on it. I want to say that's all it is. And it's been that for a very long time now. But if you go to the Financial Coach Academy website, financial coaches tend to be information gatherers. We like a lot of information. Yes. We like data. We like to research things. We want to know all there is to know before we make a decision. So there are tons of pages. If anything, Ginny is kind of like always suggesting different ways that we can organize our menu bar on the Financial Coach Academy website, because there's so many different, and we do a lot of events like the retreat and Client Creator Challenge and just so many different things. So there's a lot of different pages for different things. So it's just a perfect example of how it really does depend on your audience and sort of your business model as well. So,
absolutely.
Okay, so we've got that client who, let's imagine it's someone like me who has a website. It feels really good. I feel solid. I mean, we're always tweaking it. Of course, there's little adjustments that we're making. And sometimes Ginny sends me messages and says, hey, what do you think about us changing this? And it's like, little tweaks. But overall, they feel proud of it. Their business is growing. They're attracting and working with more people and the right kinds of people, right? So we know their website is working. And again, you can tinker with your website endlessly. But what would be next for this type of professional? What should they be focusing on when it comes to their digital marketing when their website feels mostly solid?
I think once it feels mostly solid is then really thinking about, because one of the key things with a website is knowing how does that fit with the rest of your marketing? Like what does your marketing strategy and your plan look like, and how does the website work and help with that? So once you've got like the basics, the next thing is like, okay, what else can my website do to help me get more clients? That's always going to be the top of mind thing, is like, I need to get more clients. I need to get more leads. I need to get more people. So then you're kind of thinking, okay, like what else can I do? So, if you already don't have a sign up for a newsletter, that is something that you're planning on doing, then having that functionality on the website, like sign up here for news. That's when you maybe, like, once you've got your basic, if you're kind of like, okay, I want to start educating people, giving people more information, that's maybe when you start adding a blog. And wherever that blog is actual a text blog, or it's a mixture of, you could do videos. If you have a podcast like Kelsa does, like that's where you start being able to add more content. The key with the website is don't forget about it. We have so many clients who have their website built and then they don't look at it for months and months and months. And then they come back and like, normally they look at it when something goes wrong because something happened and it wasn't, and all of a sudden something broke. And that's when they realize, oh, I haven't been on my website for a year. Definitely, your website is a kind of like breathing and living tool. And it is one of your biggest marketing tools because it's there 24/7. So, and not only are people going to go to it via referrals, but people in time are going to probably find you on Google when they're typing and searching for things. So make sure that you keep, that you're consistent with it. And also if you're changing your marketing on your other marketing, that your website is reflecting that. That's also key, because a lot of the times we're like, oh, I'm going to like, we focus on the social media side of things. I'm going to do updates on social media and do all of this. And I'm going to change my messaging on social media and I'm going to change it on if you have a flyer or whatever it is that you're doing. and then people forget to kind of like tie it back to the website. So then, you then have a disconnect. So that I've said consistency probably like 4 times now. It is just like this is, if I say anything to anyone, is be consistent, be consistent, be consistent. It's like the major thing is just be consistent throughout all of your marketing, and use your website to help you grow as well. So, and if you're doing a newsletter, drive traffic back to the website. I see a lot of people who, sometimes you just want to send a message and it's just informational. But a lot of the times there's no reason why you can't link back to your website. So if people are reading something and they're like, hey, because your newsletter doesn't have to have the whole article in there. It can literally have a little bit of it, and then they can click to read more. So just utilizing it for that, utilizing it to, and obviously the more traffic you get to the website, the higher up on the search engines. That's kind of like one of the things. If you want to be higher up on the search engines, you have to drive traffic to your website. Because if you only get like 20 people to your website, Google is not really going to like
prioritize
go, these people are not, they're not going to prioritize it, because it's going to be someone else who's probably getting 100, 200, 500, 1,000 visits to the website. So they're going to be prioritized a little more.
I'm curious your thoughts on something, and if you'll agree with my take on this, or if you'll disagree, and you are welcome to obviously share whatever your opinion is. But there's this idea of like monetizing your website, which I totally understand if you have an offer that is an extension of your coaching program or something like that you want to monetize. But I think if you're a service provider, having a whole bunch of ads or like Google ads and things that if people click, then you get like click revenue or click commissions on a professional website. It'd be different if you are a content producer. If your job is solely to monetize your website, so you've got, financial content you're writing and that's it, and you don't also have a coaching program or that kind of thing, then this is not what I'm talking about. But if you are a coach and your job is to educate people and convert people from your website and let them know that you exist, I think having ads on your website are like spammy and kind of gross. And I'm curious if you agree with that or not.
I totally agree with you on that one. Okay, absolutely. I think, I totally agree. I have to say, for a website person, I hate those. And when a client says to me, I want to put those ads, I'm like, oh, please, no, don't.
Yeah.
But you're right. If you're say a blogger, and that's what you do, you just blog and you provide content, then yes, that makes sense. As long as also, what I would preface with that is just be careful what kind of ads are going to show up on your website as well. Because if you're trying to build a certain type of brand and then you have ads showing up that have nothing to do with your brand, or they're contradicting what you are saying then that is obviously a no good thing. But if you're a service provider, I would never recommend having, the Google ads pop up and stuff like that, because one is distracting. That you're taking people away from your website. The key when you drive people to your website is you want them to stay on your website for as long as possible. You want them to kind of like go and see all of the pages, or like get stuck and kind of like, I'm going to read more. And if you have a blog, you want them to go from one to the next. So definitely don't have anything that's going to distract them. And just, and you have to make sure that the content is kind of yours. You want it to be your content. You don't want it to be someone else's content.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, good. You made me nervous there because I wasn't sure how you're going to respond. So, okay, good. I'm glad you agree with me. Ginnie has some great resource for those listening. If you are just getting started with a website, you can go to dgrcommunications.com/website tips. It's dgrcommunications.com/website tips. You can also check out the show notes of this episode, and you can click on the link directly from there. Put in your details, and Ginnie will send you some tips for your starter website. I also just want to acknowledge that I think everything we've talked about in this episode has been about the forward-facing side of the website, right? So the part that the client sees, the design, the content, the messaging, like the fun part. Honestly, let's be real, the fun part.
The fun part, absolutely, yes.
I first hired you, Ginnie, years ago now, because the part that was stressing me out so much was all of the stuff behind the scenes. Like when you were talking about the living, breathing part of the website, I mean, the updates, the making sure it's being backed up properly. And like, you get these messages that say this thing didn't download properly. And I'm like, is that a big deal? Is it not a big deal? And I was so overwhelmed with a lack of knowledge about what mattered and what didn't matter. And so there is maintenance for behind your website too. So for listeners who already have a WordPress website and you're looking for help maintaining it, like really making sure that it's being taken care of properly so you don't lose your content, or there are some random updates here and there that you need to make, Ginnie has a special offer for you. You can find the link to that in our show notes, but she offers website maintenance packages, and there's a special price for the listeners of this podcast. So I want to make sure you check that out. You can also just go find Ginnie at her website, DGRcommunications.com. Her social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, DGR Comms or DGR Communications. You can find her there as well. And please check her out. She's wonderful. She's been an amazing resource for me over the years, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast, Ginnie. Next week, we are continuing our occasional Delighting Your Clients series as we talk about how to delight your new clients in their first paid session. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and tell us just one thing that you liked about the show. We really appreciate it, and I will see you next week, Coach. That's all for today. If you're ready to grow your own financial coaching business, head over to financialcoachacademy.com for helpful resources and tools. If this episode helped you, hit subscribe and leave us a review. I'll see you next week.